Joining me now are the guys from Fastest Land Animal, and this time we can see them. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, there is a an earlier interview I did with the guys about a little bit more than a week ago, and it's an audio only, which we'll talk about why that was audio only in a moment, and we'll go clockwise. Let's see. We've got Andrew over there, the way that I'm looking. Now, you guys might see it differently, but that's what it looks like in my square. And down below Andrew is not John. And you just got some wavy lines there. So I want to make sure I get your name correct, sir.
Yeah. Sorry, Johnny.
That's Johnny Blaze.
It is.
Yeah. And continuing the clock is John and Johnny and Andrew. It's great to see you guys. Last time we talked, we could not see each other. Yeah, and somebody gets to be Ann B. Davis right in the middle, and they get to clean up a little bit. So the last time we talked about, and the Fastest Land Animal is the band name. That's the name of the album. And the album is out now. We're talking on March 5th. So it's out today. So anybody can get it. I assume all the ways that people get music anymore, which is decreasingly, go to a store and pick up a physical thing. I mean, I know that there's
what's a store?
Yeah. What's a store and what's a CD? And most people know what vinyl is, but they don't always want to spend the money on it. So when we spoke the last time, you guys were using aliases, and you guys had some fun backstories. So I'm going to start with John, and we'll kind of go from there. Talk about the idea of doing this band in a way where you guys were basically going out there as these characters. And, we spoke last time, you did the sock puppet video, and then you had the video where you guys had TVs on your heads. So it was like, who is this band? Or as every bad comedian with an impression of Jerry Seinfeld says, who are these people? That's basically what we were going on with this.
Yeah. I mean, there was a band, I think they're still around, called The Residents. I don't know if you remember them. And no one knew who they were. They had big eyeballs on their heads.
Now that you mention it, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Right. So, we had been out there for a while. The other band that we're mostly all in is called The Cringe.
Right.
And we've been touring, and, The Cringe is more of a traditionalist rock band. We would tour with Motley Crue and Alice Cooper, and we kind of knew if The Cringe came out with an album, how it would resonate, what kind of traction we would get online and other places. So I wanted to do almost an experiment to see if we totally hit ourselves. No one knew who the people were behind the band, and just let the music speak for itself, and see how it resonated and what kind of traction would we get without anyone knowing who we were. And that's what we did with this album. And plus I had, before I even came up with that brilliant idea, I just liked the name Fastest Land Animal, and almost wished I had come up with that instead of The Cringe, which I don't know, The Cringe isn't as cool a name as Fastest Land Animal, in my opinion. So, and Fastest Land Animal, the name just lent itself to a type of music, punk rock, that I love. So I had this dream for a few years. I'm going to do a punk rock album. I'm going to call it Fastest Land Animal. Then the Let's Do It Anonymously layer of it came in, and we followed that through. And then it actually lent itself to that, just given the world we live in, when we're all socially, I mean, we're like sitting at home all the time now.
Yeah, sure.
And recorded the album remotely, and we can't really tour at all. And it would be difficult to do music videos together. So let's just go full boat and be like these, you don't know who they are in the band. And then that let, people had theories online that we were this band or that band or the other band, and members of certain bands. And that was kind of fun to see how that evolved.
Yeah, because of I've worked before with the publicist that's representing you guys. I had guesses on what band I thought it was, and I was completely wrong. You guys are not Great White, but because and the reason why was because they had changed their singer. since the last time they did an album. And I'm like, well, sure, why not? And, John, you and I were speaking before we started recording the last time that, it's not unheard of. I was telling you about in the late 80s, Donny Osmond had a huge hit that was released as like mystery artist, because at that point, nobody was going to be like, you know what we should do? Z100 in New York wasn't going to play a new Donny Osmond record. But when it's like, oh, this is catchy. Oh, and we don't know who it is. Oh, that's cool. And then, the ultimate, like, punked or candid camera was we got you to play a Donny Osmond record. And so, it can definitely be effective because it's, look, I listened to the whole album over the last day or so. I listened to it a few times and I really enjoyed it. I would enjoy the album either way. I can understand somebody coming across it and it's like, wait, who are these guys? What? Yeah, what's this deal? And so I'm wondering what kind of reactions you guys got. Did you do a lot of interviews like the one we did where you guys were all there in character? Let me ask you, Andrew, because the one that we did didn't go great because I think you were Shark Samuels, or am I wrong about that?
I'm Shark Samuels. Yeah.
And this is like the big moment when Spider-Man pulls off his mask and is like, I'm Peter Parker. I've been Spider-Man since I'm 15 years old. Yes, I am Shark Samuels. But so you were going to use like a shark.
It had
voice?
the Jaws theme song.
Yeah.
Queued up in Pro Tools, and the wonders of technology, AirPods, everything canceling out everyone's background noise. Now it just canceled out my whole plan. So you guys are like, I can't hear you. And I'm like, what? This is perfect. This was great. Yeah.
So did the shark work other times, or did you just like, I can't use the shark voice?
No, the shark had to be abandoned at that point. So I just pretended to, be a human living in a shark. And
which,
we did our best.
It worked for Chevy Chase, to just have the
shark.
Yeah.
Candy
Graham.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that the personalities, the names and the backstories were all fun. And then Johnny, I'm sorry, I forget the Shark Samuels kind of. I forget John's fake name, but Shark Samuels is the one that stuck with me. So Johnny, who were you? And was there a gimmick you were going to use? Was it supposed to sound like a weird voice? Were you supposed to do a character? What was the plan?
Yeah, listen, I have a hard enough time being myself, so trying to pretend to be someone else was definitely not my forte. But we got through it.
That's fair. And yeah, I think that, and I don't know, to me, and, John, you and I spoke again before we started the last time. It's just like, look, it's a fun idea. Let's just run with it. Not like trying to prove like, wait a minute, your name isn't Shark Samuels, but, just a little behind the scenes thing for people on the video. I will show the text that I sent to Jody, your publicist, because when you guys came on Zoom, this was what I saw on the screen. So right away, I saw, we had the awesome zombie Bill Murray, but I saw your names. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then I looked and I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to talk to them about their real names and stuff because that's not the point of this. So I was just like, oh, make sure that they change that for the next one. Because I didn't post the video. Nobody saw it. I just, I put it in the show and all that. So John, did you do a fair amount of in character promotion for the album?
And it's funny, you were one of the first, if not the first, interviews that we did in character. And immediately after that interview, Shark, or Andrew, called us all up and he said, change the name on your display name on Zoom.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, duh. Anyway, we did. That's like, we did all of that, and it was fun, and it was like kind of weird but funny.
Yeah, there's plenty of times where I do the show live and I would have been streaming, but since it wasn't video, I didn't. So nobody saw it. Really, no harm, no foul, except it answered my questions pretty quickly. But look, I think it was fun, and look, when you have a fun gimmick like this, to me it's a gimmick, but I don't even mean that as a way to diminish it. I think it's a hook more than a gimmick, because a gimmick has a negative sense to it. I think it definitely, I think, gets more attraction. Did you feel like you got to do some press that maybe you wouldn't have gotten to do because it was like, and it's not even that, somebody dislikes any of you guys. It's just, you were able to get some attention. Did you guys feel like, it had the desired effect where it got more attention for the band, not knowing who you guys were?
I think so. I mean, Andrew, you're looking at the metrics more on a daily basis than I am.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the whole plan behind this was to, not have anything any of us have done in the past or who we are influence the music at all, and to see what the feedback was. And then that started kind of, playing into the whole anonymity was working for that. So people were starting to speculate, is this Green Day? Is this Eagles of Death Metal? And that started to work to the point where, just this week, we're all discussing, do we just not ever tell people who we are and just keep this roller coaster going on? Because this is fun, and
yeah, then I could have sold that. I could have sold that screen grab with your real names. Like when people got pictures of Kiss without makeup in the 70s, I'm like, I don't know, I've got this.
Been the guy. Yeah. Yeah. And then this week we were discussing, why don't we just reveal ourselves as total new characters? And that was a good Johnny Blaze idea. And, have the dead president's masks on from Point Break. And but I think Kim would have, our publicist, maybe would have had a problem with that. So
yeah. But look, and ultimately it comes down to, if you did this and then, people listen to the album and it wasn't good and they didn't like it, I think that, it helped. You had two great songs out, the first two songs on the album. And it is Fastest Land Animal, and it's now available. So let me ask you, Johnny, in terms of the actual music, because you said, you were only so comfortable being yourself in interviews. Being a character was a little bit of an ask, but you were a good sport and played along with it. But in terms of actually making the music, was there this concerted effort to, let's do something different than what we've done before? Were you guys just feeling something different right now, or what was it, Johnny?
In terms of trying to be different from our other projects?
Yeah, was it? Yeah, I mean, did that come? Did that come before? It's like, oh, this sounds different. Let's use a different name. Why do you think the material sounds so different right now?
Well, we definitely wanted to go for more of a, punk rock thing, and not maybe as classic rocky sounding as the other stuff we've done in the past. And yeah, we kind of just tailored the sounds of the record and the gear and stuff towards that. So.
Yeah, and in terms of the actual recording, Andrew, John alluded to it. Did you? And I did ask this in character, but I don't know if I can trust some of the answers that I got. So, did you guys just record separately and share the tracks? Did you? I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it, and I don't know that I talked to a musician earlier this week. And, everybody was like in the same studio, but they were all in their own booths. You've heard about other bands who, they all get tested and quarantined together before that, so there's a lot of different ways to do it. But what did you guys do?
Yeah. So technology has obviously come a really long way, really quick during COVID and the quarantine. So we're all in different parts of the country now. We are all in our remote studios. We're all gear guys too. We just love all of the intricacies. And so between Zoom, like we're on now, where we can all talk to each other and communicate, and a really cool plugin for Pro Tools or Logic called Audio Movers, we're able to literally sit behind a drum set, have everything mic'd up for a real recording session, and the other guys are able to listen with almost no latency. It's amazing how little latency there is. So they can hear in high fidelity what I'm playing or what the other guys are doing. And then we can discuss, we have our little iPhones with Zoom and we're discussing as the session's going on. So if we want to hear something a little different, Don Gilmore, our producer, would say that take was great. Let's try it as if we were in the same room together. So it really is amazing. And that's how we did it. And then we'd pass around the sessions and the tracks to each other. Once the drums were done, we'd do bounce the drums, bass would go on, and then guitars and so on and so forth. And just, we're all able to give our input the entire time. And it turned out to be a super creative process because when you're in a recording studio, there's a finite amount of time. Everyone's trying to get through things as quickly as they can, and they're watching the clock. And for this, if we felt that we wanted to take 2 days for a guitar part or a drum part, we could do that. We had the freedom to do it. So I think the end result was something that we were all really happy with.
Yeah, and by staying in longer and taking more time with it, you were actually being good citizens, because that's what we're supposed to be doing anyway, is not going
Exactly.
anywhere. So it's like, well, let's
Yeah.
take more time with the album, and that absolutely makes sense. And when you think about in terms of the fact that there's not really the delay that you would expect, like the way we're doing it right now, there could
Mhm.
be if you guys all started playing music, but if everybody was plugged in the right way. I mean, anybody who listens to a radio show of any kind over the last year, all the people on it aren't in the same room.
Yeah.
And if you were to just turn on that show for the first time in a year, you wouldn't think, oh, it sounds so different than it used to, because of where we're at with technology. So it makes sense. No reason musicians can't do this. And like you were saying, it makes it easier for you guys to be in different parts of the country, instead of like, well, maybe in 2 years we'll all be in the same place and we can do something. So John, at what point in the process were you sure, like, okay, we definitely want to do this? And by the way, does Fastest Land Animal, does it come from Napoleon Dynamite? It was the first thing I thought of. I think it's a line that he has somewhere in there, and it's just him making small talk with a girl. I think he says that the cheetah is the fastest land animal. I'm just, it might not have been that at all, but it was the one thing I thought of when I heard the name.
No, it didn't. I that's a great movie. I don't remember that specific reference, but sounds funny. I think this goes back to, oh God, years and years ago, back in my college days. There was some particular female had a bit too much to drink and went home with a particular male that she probably wouldn't have normally gone home with. And then
Fair
she
enough.
woke up the next morning and got out of there so quickly. She didn't even want to have any recollection of having been there. And we said, wow, she's like a cheetah. She's like the fastest land animal. She got out of there so fast.
It's weird, John. I didn't realize we went to college together. But yeah, it was
yeah,
a good
I know.
night. It was a good night for me, not so much for her. But
You didn't want me to mention your name, but
they usually don't. But yeah, so that it's a fun name, and it's catchy, and so I don't want to make it seem like I'm belaboring the same point, but was there a point in the process where you had the material and you're like, no, this is definitely going to be Fastest Land Animal. It's not gonna be any other name that we might have used before.
No, it was definitely, the name came first, and that was going to be the name. And then when we started this process, I had enough material, pre-written, all in demo form, so that we could do at least an EP, 4 or 5 songs, and just release it, and that would be that. And then as the creative process goes on, you get triggered to be more and more creative, and I kept writing, and we all kept collaborating, and more songs came up to the point where we had 9 songs, and it was a half hour, and then we could actually legitimately release an LP, albeit a short one, but short is cool, as the Ramones have proven with their first release, which is about a half hour long.
Yeah, no, the running time of yours would be a Ramones double album, I think, because a lot of your songs are 3 or 4 minutes, and that's easily 2 Ramones songs, sometimes 3, if you're going to factor in the KKK Took My Baby Away, which is like a minute and a half,
Or like a Wire song, which is 29 seconds.
Right, exactly. So, well, I want to talk about the actual songs on there, and then as I mentioned earlier, Too Close to the Fire and Answer in My Head are the 2 singles that are out. Those are videos that people can find. That's the easiest way to find things, but the album's available however people consume albums now. I wanted to talk about a couple of my favorites on there and a few of the different sounds on there. I liked standout for me were Bubble Candy and I'll Do the Crime, and they both had sort of where the vocals were and kind of the instrumentation. It was it was reminiscent for me in the best way, because it's my favorite Beck album. He has an album called Midnight Vultures from the early 2000s. I think it's 2000, and it had a lot of those like the highest highs that he usually does, which I mean he hasn't probably done since. And so and I love that album, so I'm like, I love these songs, and it's not like, oh, it sounded just like it just had that feel to it. What are you can any of you can jump in on those two songs in particular. We'll talk about some others, but let's just talk a little bit about Bubble Candy first.
Yeah, well, Bubble Candy is a song I co-wrote with my friend Bob Schneider, aka Bip Frisco. Was his.
You did mention him in the earlier interview. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Bob is he's a singer-songwriter, musician out of Austin, Texas. He's been around a while, and he's got a great following. He's super talented, super prolific, and he's a good buddy. And back when we were allowed to travel, my wife and I would spend quite a bit of time in Austin, where he lives. And I spent a lot of time recording and writing with him in his studio, his home studio, as he has spent time in my home studio. And I mentioned to him the day we wrote Bubble Candy, we were in his studio in Austin together. And I said, I have this project called Fastest Land Animal. The rule is every song has to be at least 150 beats per minute, which is the tempo of the song. And it's pretty fast for a song. And he said, that's easy. And then we sat down, and an hour later we had written Bubble Candy. And so I was like, good, this is totally going to be on the album. And it is. And he's featured singing vocals on it as well.
Yeah. And I think that, another song, Buried Alive, had a feel for me. Again, it doesn't sound exactly like them, but a band that plays very fast, which not everybody knows, but a band out of San Diego called Rocket from the Crypt. They had a couple of songs in the late 90s that people knew. And, if you watched MTV when they still showed videos, that sort of a thing. But talk a little bit about Buried Alive. I think lyrically, I was caught up into it, but I liked just sort of, now that you're saying the 150 beats per minute, I'm like, yes, that's exactly what it is. The songs that moved like that are probably the ones that I liked all of them, but those are the ones that I think stood out for me.
Thanks. Yeah, that one I actually wrote in New York City, sitting at my dining room table, and this was pre-pandemic, and it was just one of those, like, there was construction going on everywhere in the city. I was dealing with construction that was happening in the building next door. And there was horns blaring, there was traffic, there was all this activity going on. The window was open, and all I heard was just blaring New York City noise. And I just felt like anger, and I feel buried alive. There's so much going on. And that's where the song came out of. And this is coming from a guy who's lived in New York City most of his life. So I'm used to that. But it was just one of those New York days when you're like, ah!
Yeah, there's those days where even for New York, like, all right, even for here, this is a bit much. Yeah, it's interesting because I grew up in the rural suburbs outside of New York City, in Orange County, New York, a little town called Greenwood Lake. And my first girlfriend lived in Manhattan, and she was on a first floor apartment. So the first day that I ever stayed over, obviously I'm out on the couch because she had nice Jewish parents that were like, no, you're gonna be out there. And I just the whole time I'm like this with the big eyes, and it's just the constant noise. I'm like, yeah, I don't have that. It's like the crickets can lull me to sleep where I grew up, and it takes some getting used to. And even when you get used to it, though, it it can really follow you around a little bit.
Yeah, I'm pretty used to it. One of the apartments I had years and years ago was a second floor apartment directly above an all-night parking garage with a garage door directly underneath my bed.
Oh.
So literally every 15 minutes or however long a car would come in and out of the garage, you hear rumble, 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 rumble as the garage door opened, and then rumble, 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 rumble as it closed. So I went without sleep for a good 10 and a half months.
Jeez.
I was really having a meltdown. There's no one you can call. I called that 311 number. They didn't do anything. I literally would sneak out of my apartment. Well, not sneak out, but I would go out of my apartment at 2:30 in the morning and just like look at this garage door and see if there was like some sort of wire I could clip so that it was broken and I couldn't open it anymore because I couldn't freaking sleep. But that didn't happen, and eventually I moved.
Well,
and it's amazing, when we're out on the road in hotels and it's quiet. I mean, I can't sleep in quiet like that. It's the TV's got to be on. There's got to be some sort of sound coming from my phone because it's just too quiet.
The other thing being having played as we have in rock bands our whole lives, there's something called tinnitus, which is basically it's ear damage, and it's really serious. But if it's too quiet in the room, all I hear is because I've been exposed to too much loud music. Since then, I've made adjustments and I wear ear protection and monitors and that sort of thing. But
I mean, just to interject, it's I'm 45, and there was a point where the idea of wearing earplugs to concerts, I'm like, but what kind of loser am I that I'm doing it? But I actually have it a little bit. It's very little. I'm lucky in that I started like taking it seriously before it got really bad. But it's when it's absolutely quiet, that's when I hear it,
Right. So this is why we leave TVs on at night, or we have those, those machines that play the wavy wave noises or whatever.
Well, you also reminded me about, since it's a very sort of New York City reference, but, seeing a movie at the Angelica Film Center, if it was a good movie, you didn't realize that the subway came by like every 4 minutes.
I knew you were going to say that.
If it wasn't a good movie, you're like, the subway was really loud today.
The Angelica, they were the independent, the hipster independent theater.
I saw Train Spotting there, and that was one where I actually didn't notice the subway. Probably
Blair Witch Project there.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly.
But like literally, the subway, the 6 line runs. I think the Angelica's still around. Runs directly underneath the theater. So if it's a quiet part of a movie, and a lot of the movies they play there are very serious, quiet, pensive foreign films, and this kind of thing. You hear just like rumble, 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 rumble.
Well, Johnny, with there being a sort of a new approach towards the material on this album, was there something you were excited about, that you got to do on this, whether it's a specific song or just playing in a different style? Was there something that stands out, when you either listen to or just think back on the album as a whole? What's the standout for you that you were able to do that maybe you'd been itching to do for a while?
Don and John kind of wanted this like extended solo at the end of Bubble Candy, and we're gonna do like an old school fade out, like an old record, like just fades out, like everyone just like kind of bashing it out. And I was like, oh cool, we're gonna have a fade out. I was like, I haven't heard a fade out in forever. And I was like, cool, let's do that. Record gets mixed, mastered, no fade out.
So what you played was so cool, we had to keep it. And by the way, that was so the album was mixed by Chris Lord-Alge, who was one of the most famous, preeminent album mixers out there. Like if you look in your record collection, probably at least half of what you own is mixed by CLA. And we told him to fade it out, and he just sent it back and without the fade out. And I don't know if it was a mistake or deliberate, but we're like, I called Don and Don called me. I'm like, I know we were supposed to fade this out, but kind of sounds cool the way it is, right? And he's like, yeah, let's just keep it. And then we kept it. So that's CLA's fault, Johnny, not ours.
Yeah. Next album, Johnny's going to do only fade outs. Every song's going to fade out. The interesting thing about fade outs, it's like off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but it's almost like, I think While My Guitar Gently Weeps has a fade out. Like there's songs with fade outs where you're like, what are you doing? Like,
well, then you have the same album on the White Album, Helter Skelter, has the fade out and then the fake fade out and it fades back in.
That's awesome. That I like. I think, what, that should come back. I think that every album should have that. Interesting that, referencing the Beatles, because the song on the album, Never Gonna Leave, there's a to me, I like made this note while I was walking around listening to it, because there were 2 parts that had very distinctive feels, and I'm like, oh, it shouldn't work. There's like sort of there's a part that had a Beatles sort of harmony, but then some of the distortion, I'm like, well, this kind of feels like Al Jorgensen in the Ministry. And I'm like, I don't know how the same song has that put together, because it shouldn't work, but it does. Anybody who wants to talk about that song, jump in on Never Gonna Leave.
Yeah, I wanted to do a song. I was thinking of on the album, the Foo Fighters album, Wasting Light, there's a song called White Limo. And I actually think it won a Grammy. And that's a real trashy, gnarly, real distorted vocal sounding song. So I wanted to do a song kind of like that. So that was what I had in mind when we recorded that. And we specifically recorded and mixed the drums so they sounded real trashy and nasty, recorded the vocals so that they were like really crunchy and distorted. And then when it came to the bridge part of the song, I just had this idea, let's do something a little diametrically opposed to the rest of it. It still will have that, trashy sound to it, but maybe something a little slower, a little prettier, just to kind of put a little intermission in the middle of the song, a little pause before you go back to the nasty part.
Andrew, what about your sort of similar question to what I was asking Johnny before? Is there whether a song or a part of a song that really stands out for you, something that's like, oh, it was really fun to get to do this because maybe it was different than what you'd had the opportunity to do recently?
Yeah, probably again with Bubble Candy, because that was kind of like the jam song where we're all doing something a little different. We get to have a little fun with it. And again, the outro, we're musicians, we have fun playing, and it was just different enough, and it was inspiring too, because the harmonica in there and having Bob do his thing in there, it was just a cool different vibe. So I think that one was fun. I also really like, I'm traditionally more of like a, not slower, but more of like a groove oriented, drummer, and some of these punky upbeat songs were fun too, just like never gonna leave, kind of channeling the inner Josh Freese to do kind of what he does with the Vandals, and it's just just driving forward, and so I mean all of it was fun. And again, I don't know that we would have been able to do it how we did it if we were in a studio together, just methodically trying to knock out songs to make a record. So
Right.
being able to go back and forth, even if we changed the drum part completely, like we could decide on something, and then the next day I could say, hey guys, I had an idea, listen to this. That was just so I think it's a better scenario. We were able to really try different things, and get our final thoughts and ideas down how we really wanted them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So the album's out now, and obviously, touring is very difficult. Obviously, you get people that can do some one-off shows here and there. I talked to David Ellefson from Megadeth, and he had done some shows in Texas back in November, and he actually told me that he's like, what, I probably wouldn't do it again. Just because it's like after the fact, you're like, oh wait, was that really safe?
The name of
But
the band is Megadeth. I don't know.
yeah, well, it was his solo album, and I think that's the problem. It's like for the big band, it's like, yeah, well, obviously, you went to a Megadeth concert, there's a chance you're gonna probably catch an infectious disease of some sort. But and I've talked to other artists
ignoring during a pandemic, Megadeth, Anthrax, who else?
Yeah, that's a great point. But in terms of so look, you can obviously there are online performances. There's good old fashioned TV performances. Is there any any plans to play together at some point in the near future, or is it all like, well, let's see where the world's at in the fall, or what are you guys thinking? Next step after now that the album is out.
I mean, obviously, we're waiting to hear what we are allowed to and could do safely before we make any of those sorts of plans. There's really nowhere to play anyway that I'm aware of. So what we're focusing on immediately is just writing and recording more songs for another Fastest Land Animal album. And then assuming we can get that done, and then the world returns back to normal, then we'll have, even that much more material to actually perform live, which is what we really want to do and really miss doing.
Yeah, I think that getting more material, I think that'll be great, and because now, do you want to have a 9-song set list? When you have 2 albums to mix it up, and maybe a couple of the Ramones songs we threw around in here, maybe something that you guys could throw in the encore or whatever. But no, look, it makes sense. I mean, you definitely you look and I know I try to be optimistic. You hear things that are encouraging. You don't hear things where it's like, oh great, everything's normal, but you're like, okay, it's heading in a direction where we hope it continues to do that, because obviously I want to be able to just go to concerts, and I'm sure you guys would love to play this stuff live somewhere. And doing more of the album, doing another album would be great. So in terms of where everybody can find everything, it's fastestlandanimal.band, right? And I think John
Correct.
said, Andrew, that's on you for knowing that .band was a thing, right?
It's a thing, and our social media marketing guy is a great musician too, and we had discussed how to fastest land animal is such a common term.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to get everything you want to line up. So that turned out to be it. And we keep joking around that .band. Why doesn't everyone have that? We just go around and we're going to buy all the .bands now, and then everyone can get them back from us. And that'll be our
you guys
retirement plan.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about when we did the earlier interview. You guys won't even need to tour. You just be like,
we're
Foo
just
Fighters
the
.band. Yeah. Metallica .band.
Your Megadeth .band, you got to come through us.
Yeah, look,
Right.
If you get Megadeth.band, I will definitely make sure that Dave Ellefson knows about it. But I don't know if he's gonna be the one to cut the checks. And he'll probably have to get Dave Mustaine on the call, because he doesn't get to write.
Hey, his money's as green as anyone's.
Yeah, but he doesn't get to use the company checks that have the Megadeth logo on it. Like the nice pus head checkbook. With
I wouldn't even cash that check. That's too cool.
Yeah.
That's what they're counting on. Like, look at this check. Yeah, just as a complete aside, when I was in college, I interned at Saturday Night Live, and I wrote a joke that got on the air, and I got it for $100. I got a check, and people were like, "Oh my God, are you going to frame that check?" I'm like, "No, I'm going to cash it. I made a photocopy. I made a Xerox of it, and I put that up. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to frame the check. Are you kidding? That's $100."
All right, so now you got to tell us, what was the joke?
Well, the joke has a word that we don't use anymore, and it's not racial. It's just it's insensitive. So it loses a little bit of the punch. But I will construct it from memory. I'm not going to read it. This is literally 21 years ago. It was in early 2020. Early 2000. So it was at the U.S. Comedy Arts Festival. Jerry Lewis said that he couldn't name any funny female comedians because he thought of them only as baby making machines. He then proceeded to spend the next hour telling the crowd about his own comic genius in falling down and making fun of differently abled people. So the punchline had the R word in it, and we don't say that anymore. But in 2000, you said that on TV, it got a laugh. So by changing it to be a more appropriate joke, I don't know if it's funny anymore, but it got me $100.
Yeah, nice. And you cashed the check, but at least you.
Johnny didn't like it. Johnny just flat out did not.
Johnny
he just did not like my joke.
And he left.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Either that or he's a huge Jerry Lewis fan, which I don't blame him, because both. Because that's the real Nutty Professor. Let's be honest, is the Jerry Lewis one. Yeah. Well, guys, it was fun to get to chat with you again. Both of them were fun, but it's nice to actually get to see and have the conversation and get to talk about making the album. And I look forward to hearing more from you guys. And whenever it is that there are live shows, I will see if I can get onto Shark Samuel's comp list. I won't ask any of you guys, but I will directly write to Shark and see if maybe he has an allotment of tickets. That
I know a guy. Yeah.
We'll get you backstage. Just stay away from the catering.
That's fair. You know what? I probably should.
Especially if it's pot roast. It's going to be a big fight over that.
I didn't know it was. I didn't know it was. I didn't know you guys were having Boston Market cater the back room. Come on.
Johnny's a big fan of pot roast, and whenever there's pot roast on the menu, that is a good night for Johnny.
Look, I don't know where else we could leave it other than that. Thanks so much to the guys, John, Andrew, and Johnny. Fastest Land Animal, fastestlandanimal.band. Give it a listen. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. All right. We'll see you, Chris.
Talk to you soon.